Grandpa or Doug and Danae. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great on a cloudy, rainy, not quite winter, but we're awfully close to the official entrance of winter.
No,
sure looks wintry out there.
It looks wintry, but here it is December 10th, I think.
Yeah.
And it was 65 degrees this morning.
Yeah.
In Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, but that's the high for the day. And now with colder air coming in, just so people will know the weather forecast and the fact that when you get to my age,
we love the weather report.
Weather's like one of two or three. You know, I'll read the obituaries in the morning to see how many of my friends are still with us. And then I go to the weather and
But we do go to the weather. But yes,
yeah.
I say Atlanta, but you have to know we are in the fabulous suburbs of Dacula, Georgia.
Dacula, Georgia.
Look that up. Dacula.
People always have trouble. They call it Dacula. Sounds like Dracula. That's the opening line for anybody that's not familiar with coming out here to visiting with us. But it's a great place. It's beautiful and beautiful property, and it's a great place to host people and have conversations that we're having.
We love having people in for conversations, and that's something after the first of the year, we'll be talking more about that.
Right.
But today, I want to go back and talk about something we have not talked about in a while. No, I'm not going to sing, much to everybody's dismay, but... Okay, I heard you.
Okay. Maybe Matt can edit that out.
You may know. Leave it right there, mister. Don't mess with things. We're going to talk about the movies for just a minute. Going to the movies.
Okay.
And you and I have different types of movies that we like.
Yeah.
Things that I don't like.
Right.
I don't love murder movies. I don't love war movies. In fact, pretty much I don't like movies that make me sad.
Right. Well, that would make sense. Sure. Well, first of all, what kind of movies do you like? Just so everyone will be clear on that. Not that they couldn't guess, knowing the 7 within you, but just make it official.
Yes. Well, okay. My number 1 would be rom-coms, romantic comedies.
Yes.
Things that end happily and make me laugh.
Yeah.
And I don't walk away going, I'm so sad.
Right.
Or I'm so scared of people.
Yes.
Yes. You, on the other hand, like.
Well, okay, so first of all, when you refer to the things I like, when you talk about murder mysteries, Silence of the Lambs, of course, is one of my all-time favorites.
Yes.
I think it's because I just love the way human minds work, either or work or don't work. And obviously Hannibal had a few little areas of his life where he was brilliant, but just a thing or two there that didn't work right.
Just a thing or two.
But
we might
I like
talk
that.
about that.
I love Saving Private Ryan, but I'm not really a war movie per se guy. And I would also say this, even though I'm not into some of the romantic comedies that you enjoy and will watch, you and I both agree that we love comedies.
Comedy.
Just comedies, movie that not necessarily romantic comedy, but just comedies.
Yeah. You're
like,
right.
I'm not into You've Got Mail. What's the other one they did?
French Kiss.
Oh, and you love French Kiss.
One of my all-time favorites. Right. Boy, we're going down a whole different path now. We're just going down
Is our time up?
And have a happy holiday.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
But what I wanted to get to is somehow you and I stumbled upon this cult classic that we both absolutely loved. And it was called Napoleon Dynamite.
Gosh.
Oh, I have to step away from the mic.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, because we will still quote lines. And it's funny, I actually had to look it up and say, what is a cult classic? And yes, believe it or not, Napoleon Dynamite fell into that category. And while it would be fun to go around and type all of the different characters, give them their Enneagram types, that's not what we're doing. But I wanted to kind of have a conversation about one particular character in that movie. But let me tell you, if you have not seen this movie, A, the question is, why not? It's a classic. But B, I'm going to need to give you a little overview of this character that we're going to talk about so you know what we're talking about. And that character is Uncle Rico.
Oh, yeah. Love Uncle Rico.
Yeah. Okay, so here's just a little brief explanation of who he is, and it's not going to be hard to conjure up an image. So he's like a guy in his mid-30s or so. He's the uncle to the main character, Napoleon. But when Uncle Rico, or just Rico, was in high school, he was a popular football star with dreams of going to the NFL. But he dropped the winning pass for the big game and lost the popularity soon after. He dropped out of high school, abandoned his dreams, and lived in his Santana ever since. He spent his time filming himself.
By the way, for the younger people with us, Santana.
Yeah.
He lived in an orange 1970s looking orange van.
Oh, I thought I mistyped the name of the city.
And no.
Thank you.
No. Uncle Rico lived in his van, and it had the rust carpet, all the stuff that us older people who know what the 70s were about. Orange van. Orange was a huge color there. Yeah. So Uncle Rico lived in that van.
Yes. Okay.
It was nice, but it was a van.
No, it wasn't nice. But anyway, he constantly was living in this mindset of, I could have done this. He said he could have gone on to win the big high school football championship and gone to the University of Idaho to win the BCS championship. So, in a nutshell, that's Uncle Rico. He lived in the what could have been. I could have been a star. I could have been this if only I hadn't dropped that pass.
Right. And also, he was also a quarterback, and so he threw a lot of passes as well. And he was always taking the football, and he was always talking about how he could throw a football over those mountains out there. He'd say, "You see those mountains? I could throw a football. I could throw a football through a brick wall. I could, And he had like this basket of footballs, and he would literally go outside in a field and do nothing but throw footballs as if he were back in the day as the high school quarterback.
And film himself doing it and watch them.
Yeah, he videoed himself doing it.
And live in that moment over and over. And
so
then
he was pretty well stuck there.
At one point, he asked one of the other characters, Kip, Napoleon's brother.
Right.
Who I loved. He said, Kip, you know anything about cyberspace? And he said, you ever come across anything about time travel? Because he really wanted to go back.
Right.
He wanted to go back in time. So it's hard when you believe that life would have worked out perfectly, if only. When you believe that had you made that one choice or had you not made that one choice, then life would have put you on a path to everlasting happiness. And so when we live with the lie that we are denied all privilege and, quote, the good life, because we've already set our entire course with that one moment in the past, then you are absolutely stuck. You are stuck in a worldview, stuck in a mindset that I will call unhealthy. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But choices and consequences, of course, we can all look back and go, well, I really wish I had not made that choice, because it does bring back a negative consequence or a consequence that leads to pain and suffering. But those are the moments that you have to be able to take that choice and say, how do I evolve from here? And that's what we're talking about, is how we can take the choices that we made, look at them for what they were, and how do we move into a healthier level of who we are destined to be.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that you're going to get to here shortly is the fact that, once again, life is a process that never ends, that this process of being stuck is not a one-time thing. You may have an overall problem with being stuck in the past, but as you continue to mature, you always will look back and see choices and consequences that could have been differently if, in fact, you're growing.
Hopefully, yes.
Right.
But it has to be intentional, that we've talked about many times.
Right, and we can talk about that a bit, too.
But this is what I love about the Enneagram, and another map that we'll talk about in just a second that we've referred to many times before, spiral dynamics. But you can look, if you are willing, you can look and say, I am here. Just like when you go to the doctor and you have tests and they go, okay, this is how much you weigh. This is what your cholesterol level is. You are here. Right?
Yeah.
And then it's you get to decide.
Yes.
Do I want to change and move forward and become healthier?
Or do I want to just go home and tell my wife that the doctor said everything is cool?
And eat the pie.
And yes, what are we having for holidays?
And
by the way, I have a checkup coming, like in the next 10 days, something like that, because I go every quarter. And I told my doctor, one of the most cruel things in the world is to have somebody come in for their quarterly checkup right before Christmas, right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I know.
Ouch.
Yes. Well,
but you're right. I mean, Enneagram is another tool, and it's defining, right, or it's looking at ways in which you're continually seeing the healthy versus unhealthy aspects of your particular number, correct?
Right. Yes. Okay, so I want you to kind of go back for those who may not have heard earlier podcasts where we talked about spiral dynamics, because this is, as Doug's going to go over in just a minute, there is a collective worldview, how you see the world, and then there is how you evolve in your own consciousness. And the problem is a lot of times you get in that space and you don't take the time to go get the checkup, to go look at where you've come from. And so you just think that's where life is and where it's always been. But if you take the time to look at either of these tools, or both of them, actually, you can say, oh man, I really see where I was in my 20s. I see where I was in my 30s. I really didn't realize it because it happens over time. Your thought processes evolve slowly. You can't look at the healthiest level or the highest level on the spiral and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to go there today, because it is a process. And so only when you look from where you have come from can you see your evolution. You can't see beyond where you are right now, right?
That's it. And what, to me, you're talking about is it's that which we are as observer. And our power of observation becomes more and more and more mature. Our enlightenment and awareness of this observation power grows and grows and never quits growing till the day you die.
Right.
And so the question is, why is it that some seem to have this power of observation so much more than others? Well, the answer is because it's a product of evolution. Well, how does evolution happen? Well, we can talk about that, and why does it not happen? But basically, what you're talking about, Danae, is this ability for us to be the observer and then to pursue the observation of where we've been so that we can improve where we're going.
Yeah, right. And again, we've used this term, the unworkable. In your life, in your personal life, it most often happens when a situation becomes unworkable. You begin doing, we were talking about this morning, where you just do. You do the work. You do the traditional thing you've always done. This is how it's always been. And then something doesn't work right anymore. When you get to a painful place in your life, it's like, I don't know why. I've done this since I was 10 or 15. Sure. Why am I uncomfortable in this way of functioning or seeing in the world? Why did Uncle Rico, why was it hard for him to relate to other people?
Well, now you're bringing up relating and relationship, and the question of why does our relationship seem to have changed? Why is our relationship not working as it did in the past? Or why have I suddenly come into conflict with my parents or siblings and so on and so forth? All of these things are results of the evolution of our consciousness.
Right. So like within the spiral.
Yes, that's a good point. So the three current levels in the spiral, in the model of spiral dynamics that are prevalent right here in the United States, and that's where we're podcasting today. So I'll just talk about right here in the West, particularly the United States.
And spiral dynamics is
a model of the collective worldview, of worldviews, of collectives. Whereas the Enneagram, we're getting into our specific individual types within a worldview. So the three worldviews that are prevalent here in the U.S. are the traditional, the modern, and the postmodern. And once again, as you, the 7, have known in your life, you can begin as a 7 in a traditional worldview and move on to a modern, postmodern worldview, still be a 7.
Yes.
So that's why it's important to know the collective worldview and how it affects your life, what worldview you hold, and what impact that has on you becoming a healthy 7, healthy 9, healthy 6, etc. Because both of those have to go together, your worldview and your individual type, as they both evolve. So in the traditional, that is the hand-me-down of grandparents, parents, generational. If you're in religion, you go to the same religion, have the same religious practices. If you're from an ethnicity or culture of a particular kind, you do the things the way they have always been done. It's traditional.
And so you don't... Even political.
And political parties. And you don't question that.
Right.
So in your traditional age, you will find people that are very, you might call fundamental in their belief systems and ways of doing things and very much box-oriented. When you move into modernity, modernity is the first level in which people begin to question. And this, Danae, to me, is the worldview that allows people to really start looking at things like the Enneagram. Because if you're in the traditional worldview, you're running up against people with their more fundamental beliefs, be they religious or otherwise. And for them, they're thinking, no, this is the way it's always been before we even heard of this thing called the Enneagram. Why do we need this thing called the Enneagram? We have everything we need.
Right.
It's not until you move into a modernity worldview that you will join all those who want to know what are the latest scientific discoveries, what are the ways in which things could be different, what are the things that need to be changed, and I could talk on that for hours. So the main point is that for the first time, people become open, and you really need to be at least a level of modernity in order to really start using that power of observation, which allows you to question all of those things within your number and start considering whether or not they are healthy, average, unhealthy, etc. And then, of course, postmodernity is the one that has brought us the most inclusive worldview. And that worldview is so inclusive that it's very much concerned about discrimination. Therefore, Black Lives Matter, or gender discrimination, #MeToo, and on we go. And those worldviews are very much about the oneness of all people. So if I am in an Enneagram number as a 7 and I'm in postmodernity, I may be marching in a parade for the rights of the LGBTQ community. Whereas if I'm a 7 in the traditional worldview, my culture, my religion may say that the LGBT community has a lesser value or is in some way unhealthy, and therefore they are less than. So these worldviews have to be seen in terms of your Enneagram number. And then final point I'll make is, therefore, you're going to find that people that are at least open to the Enneagram are going to be the ones that are most likely to discover their power of observation and to use the Enneagram most effectively as a maturing, growing tool. And the ones in your family or people that you know and friends and that are close to you, if they're in a more traditional viewpoint, you're going to be beating your head against the wall until they encounter something in their life. Oh, my daughter just came out and said that she is part of the lesbian community, and suddenly you find an unworkable situation in your life. You can't write that off. You begin then to ask questions about, well, can this be true? Can I still love my daughter? So it's that kind of thing that is happening.
That's the end. No, because this is also an Enneagram conversation. This is why I think it's so important to understand worldviews, and I'm going to go ahead and just say this. I haven't really even discussed saying this with you.
Uh-oh. Be ready, Matt.
I know. Matt is our technical guru who
he edits
things out.
Okay.
But I'm going to say it, and I know I'm probably going to lose some followers. But this is why I think religion, and I'll just stick with religion as a whole, has hijacked the Enneagram.
Ah, yes.
And tried to fit it into a traditional worldview box.
Well, the frustration that people have with that, and I've heard you talk about this conversation, is a worldview conversation that you just put your finger on. The reason people do that is because they have a traditional view that centers around their particular religion. And for them, their complete identity is that whole viewpoint that includes their religion. Therefore, if I'm going to study the Enneagram, and I really like that I'm a 7, and I see that I'm a 7, I also have to make sure everyone knows that a healthy 7 is going to be part of whatever my religion is, because I have a traditional worldview. And that's the frustration of people that have modern or postmodern worldviews who say, wait a minute, this goes beyond that. And there you have your conflict coming from people's worldviews. Their number's the same. I'm a 7, and I'm thinking that the Enneagram, for example, I come out of Christianity, the Enneagram's Christian. Well, if I'm a 7 and I'm in postmodernity and I'm inclusive of all world religions, or even those who are spiritual but not religious, that's going to be a rub.
Yes.
Because my worldview is different than that. And I say, wait a minute, the Enneagram is far more than that.
Exactly. And that's, you know what, I'll just say, I took a little side road there for a minute, but that is, again, why I think it's so important to study worldview in conjunction with your own personal evolutionary growth. That's just my opinion. But, and if you're familiar with the biblical narrative, you might remember Paul saying, and again, let me say, we speak from the biblical narrative. We have not abandoned. You'll hear when you study spiral dynamics, there's transcend and include, or open your eyes to questioning the traditional views that you've always been handed down. But we do speak from the biblical narrative, and I quote it at times, but Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And what I think about that is, again, it's so much easier to see, yeah, I know what I did when I was a child. Sure, I understood that I believed in, the tooth fairy or whatever it is from childhood. I get that. I can definitely see. I am an adult now. But it becomes less evident once you get kind of set in your adulthood to have that self-inquiry and look at what people who have been in this field for, decades, psychologists and others who work in the field of personal development, what they've discovered and what you can tell from the unbiased data of where we are on the map, where we might be stuck. So if you want to, it has to be intentional. When you get to that unworkable part of your relationship, and again, this is absolutely the core of everything we talk about, is our relationships. If it doesn't matter in my relationships, then none of this information, none of the data, none of the worldviews, none of the Enneagram tools matter unless you can take them into your relationships. So, what I wanted to talk about a little bit further is beyond type, beyond stances, beyond instincts, is the vital work of honestly looking at where you are in health. You go to the doctor to get a physical checkup. My husband's winking at me like, really, Danae, when's the last time you did that? Okay, I'm going to be better about that. And again, this is part of the thing is I keep saying, well, I'm fine. I feel fine. Life is fine. Why would I go to the doctor? I don't feel sick. And I'm making this public declaration and saying that is an immature way to think. I need to go get a physical. And be able to say, okay, here's where you are. You might need to reconsider how much cheese dip you eat every week. Your cholesterol's a little high. Did I touch it?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Now the doctor has gone to meddling.
Yes, right. And you know what? I think that's how people think when we talk about health of the Enneagram, health of where we are in our journey. It's like, no, I'm happy where I am. Let's leave. Again, I've said this. Let's leave well enough alone. But I want to reference quickly, because I think I've kind of run over a little bit on the time, a book that's been around for quite a while. It's Rico and Hudson's The Wisdom of the Enneagram. Gives you a beautiful map of how each of us evolve in our health. And there are 9 levels of health, and they're broken up into 3 sections. And the bottom 3 would be the unhealthy, the middle 3 would be the average, and the top 3 would be the healthiest. So that's what we're hoping to attain, is the healthiest version of ourselves that we can be. But I'm just going to put a link to the book. But within each type, again, they go through the healthy and the unhealthy. So you can look at the unhealthy level and go, oh, yep, that's exactly what I did in my more unconscious days. So to see where you are, to be able to look at the map and see exactly what your view is of processing thought. And you can say, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get to that next level, but I see that I need to continue the inquiry, continue looking at what's unworkable in my life and what might I do to question my own choices, my own belief systems, my own thought processes, my autopilot way of functioning in life. So I'm going to wrap it up with, I put a quote up the other day on Instagram. I loved this. It was a girl who, anyway, the quote is, I have already lost touch with a couple of people I used to be. Isn't that a powerful statement?
Yep.
To be able to acknowledge that, yep, I've lost touch with them. But I added this thought, because you cannot be angry with your past self. So what I said was, they served me well when I didn't know better. They were who I needed to be at the time. And without the choices they made that caused me pain and caused others pain, I would not have grown. The pain was my path to growth. So be kind to your past lives. They did the best they knew at the time. Thank them, and then say goodbye.
So basically, what I'm hearing you saying is, love thy number, because it is yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's who you are today. But what I consider unhealthy today, I might consider even other things that I thought were healthy, unhealthy tomorrow. And I can always be healthier.
Yeah.
So this is the key to the power of observation, is we can grow constantly in becoming healthier people, which just simply means our lives are far more abundant.
And don't get stuck. Don't get trapped in the what if or the if only. And my takeaway from this is, don't be an Uncle Rico.
Gosh.
I hope you get to know truly the joy of who you are by loving your own number. Have a great week.